Hi guys and girls, I'm Al from Games Re-Up, and today we're going to have a nice little debate, and that is about retro gaming and why is it doing so damn well at the moment? Why is there such a resurgence? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so point number one. Why on earth are games now so long? So obviously, when you think of retro games, you think of short bursts of gameplay, where you can play a platformer game like Sonic or Mario. Now okay, those games, maybe Mario, can take a little bit longer than Sonic, where you can complete a game like Sonic within an hour or two. That was the whole game in its entirety. Now, you're lucky to get a game, i.e. Fallout. Don't get me wrong, Fallout is a great franchise, but a lot of games, they do not have just a standard single player game. There's always added extras. Now, I suppose you're thinking, well, that is value for money, and I suppose you're right in a way. But do we really have time in our busy schedules to devote all of our time to these games? Whereas you could pick up a Sonic or a Mario game and play it as easy as pie. You literally pop the cartridge in, turn the game on, and press play, and you're off. You're off on a little adventure which will only take you an hour or so. It's the same with basically, going on to point number two, these games all derived from arcade classics. So games like Steroids, Space Invaders and games like that, where it was quick bursts of gameplay. And these quick bursts of gameplay actually made you want to keep coming back. Now, like I said, because these started in the arcade, and when they were ported over to the consoles, home consoles, these were nigh on exactly the same. Now obviously the hardware was different, but the game itself was nigh on identical. So you got things like Pac-Man as well. Pac-Man is just hours and hours of, well, not, it can be hours and hours if you play it for long enough to get a high score, but that'll be another point in a second. But these games were literally built for quick bursts of gameplay, and all you did was had a high score and you wanted to try and beat it. Now that was always the goal really, and the same with Sonic. You just wanted to get more coins, more score, get onto that leaderboard. Whereas now you are thrown into a brand new imaginary world that will literally last for hours upon hours. It's the same with multiplayer nowadays. Multiplayer is no longer same room. It can be, and there is a little bit of a resurgence of this happening in some games, but most games you do not get same room multiplayer action. It's always online, and to be honest with a lot of games, even though people have headsets and microphones now, they don't even talk to each other. They're literally in it for themselves. Even team-based games like Battlefield, anything like that, these games really aren't played in the way they should be. Whereas if you were playing in the, let's just say older days, maybe late 80s, early 90s, you would have been in the same room, giving banter to your friends, throwing things at them when you're losing, but who cares? This was the way retro gaming was, and it just felt as if you were playing the game together. You just don't get that anymore. Now obviously going back to the point with arcade games, now these games were also a lot harder. Now obviously there's your Dark Souls, your, well, not Morrowind, but any games like that, Dark Souls, which is really hard to beat. The older games were like this almost constantly. You didn't really get an easy game. Now again, this was due to the arcade's influence. In the arcades, these games were made to basically eat all your quarters, or your pound coins if you're in England, to basically take all your money and leave you wanting more. But it works really, really well, and I cannot deny it. I went to arcades, I played a lot of games, obviously games like Virtual Cop, anything you can really think of in the arcades, also things like Pac-Man and all that, and they would literally just keep you there for hours and hours and hours trying to beat a boss, or to get a higher score on whatever game you were playing. And obviously this then transferred itself over to the home consoles and went with it. The games were short, but they were hard, so they were hooking you there for hours. So in a way you weren't not getting your money's worth. You were getting your money's worth because the game was hard and pretty hard to beat. Like I said, apart from with Dark Souls, but a lot of games have obviously the easy option, which is fair play if you just want to play a single player storyline and you just want to experience the game, then actually find it harder to beat. So okay, I can see the point there, but games are just not as hard as they used to be. And that's where I think retro games have really taken their grip on people again, is the games are hard, they are hard to beat, but it's really hard to explain until you actually play a lot of retro games. But when you play retro games, older games, they really do hook you in, and you just want to keep playing it and keep playing it and keep playing it until you beat the game. And once you beat the game, you feel like you have literally won a marathon. It's something else. You've got FIFA, you've got Call of Duty, you're probably going to have some new Battlefield, be it Star Wars Battlefront this year. It's essentially Battlefield dressed up in Star Wars. I'm not knocking the game, I do enjoy it a lot, but these are just simple, they almost look like reskinned versions of their previous game. It's the same with FIFA. With FIFA, all you're doing is getting updated teams, different strips. Okay, the only thing different they've done this year is they've added girl football players, which is fair play. Women's football's great, but they're not doing anything revolutionary with their games. They're just bringing the old game out rehashed with a brand new box. FIFA 16, it's brand new, is it? I don't think so. It's really not new. And let's face it, when you're paying 50 quid a pop, or $70 or whatever it is in America, then you would really expect to have more for your money. So if FIFA are going to go down this line of literally doing a fuck all every time, why don't they just release FIFA, let's just call it FIFA, and then release updates each year? Maybe half the price of their original game. But I suppose the problem is, people are still buying these new versions. Don't know why they do, because let's face it, I've only just bought FIFA 15 for $9.99. I waited a whole year, and I'm enjoying that. So at the end of the day, I love football, but I'm not going to pay 50 quid a time just for minor changes where they really have had it just boggles the mind. Okay, so there's also no originality in characters anymore. So remember Sonic and Mario, let's go back to them. Sonic was Sega's mascot, Mario Sega's mascot. Obviously it was originally Donkey Kong before Mario, but we all remember Donkey Kong, Mario, blah blah blah. So you remember those iconic figures. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What's the iconic figure of Sony at the moment? Because I really don't think you're going to have an idea, are you? Because let's face it, back in the day I suppose it would have been Lara Croft or Crash Bandicoot. Nowadays I suppose you have Drake from Uncharted series, or can't really think of a lot else, because consoles don't really have any originality when it comes to characters. You just don't get it, apart from, like I said, the ones I just said about Drake from Uncharted, and I suppose the Master Chief from Halo, things like that, but there just really aren't any real iconic characters anymore. Forgive me if I'm wrong. If you've got any answers to that, then leave a comment and we'll see exactly what you think. But in my mind, there's really no originality when it comes to characters anymore. Whereas back in the day, Sonic, Mario, you'd rush out to buy their brand new games because you just wanted to play Sonic. And let's face it, okay, it was always a platformer game, but the levels were totally different. I suppose then I'm also going against my original argument, which was the games nowadays aren't original, but I suppose the platformer games weren't massively original, because if you think about it, Sonic was just another platformer, and every time it was just another platformer. Okay, the graphics were a lot better, the music was really overhauled, so I suppose there was some originality there, whereas now the games just don't really change. I suppose when the consoles change, it looks better and the sound's slightly better, but you can't really do a lot more than you originally could. Okay, so finally, to round it all off, we've got the nostalgia factor. So basically, we all remember growing up with our Sega Mega Drives, our Nintendos, or even our PlayStation 1s. That was where we started playing games and wanted to really invest in playing games. Now when I say invest in playing games, you would wait until your birthday comes around. Your parents said, right, you can have one game. That's one game. And that game you'd have for probably a year or so, or before your next birthday or next Christmas comes around. You would play that game for hours upon hours. You knew that game inside out, but you kept on playing it. The problem is nowadays, kids are generally pretty spoiled. I think all people would understand that, but then again I suppose games have become a lot more accessible to people. So they're not just spoiled little brats, but, well, they are. So they are obviously a lot more accessible nowadays, and some of them do drop in price pretty quickly compared to how it used to be, whereas cartridge games and obviously PlayStation 1 games when they first came around were extremely expensive. I don't know really how to explain it, but you just really didn't get as many games as you do now. Most people have a collection of games, whereas back in the day, like I said, you'd have a couple games and you would play it until the cartridge fell apart. You felt honoured to have that game, and it just felt precious. You had such great times playing it, and I really think that's where the nostalgia factor comes back to it, is you just remember the good days. And that is why I think retro gaming is really on the rise and will keep going for quite a while. Like I said, I think people do think it's a fad. I personally don't think it's a fad, because I just think people remember the originality and effort that went into game making back then. I suppose the thing is, you do have GTA nowadays. That was originality at its best, and I still think they're bringing something new to the game each time. So that, I will admit, fair play to them. They're being original, there's a lot of originality there, and they're really putting a lot of effort into their games, be it artwork, music, you name it, they're putting their all into it. But that really is the exception, because not a lot of games really do that anymore. Anyway, I've been yabbering for an absolute age right now. I hope you've enjoyed this anyway. It's just a little... I did an article for someone, and I thought I'd make a video out of it, so I thought you'd like to see exactly what I think. Anyway, I've been Al from Games Re-Up. Make sure you click on the old subscribe button. I'd love to hear your views on exactly what you think about this. Be it negative, be it positive. I'd just like to hear all sides of the argument. And let's read and find out and see exactly what you guys think. So click on subscribe, check out all my older videos. I've also got a brand new video coming up soon about the history of Doom 4. As well as checking out my older reviews, which you need to make sure you see. Because if you see the first ones, Jesus Christ, I've come a long way. Anyway, I'll see you all soon. It's Al signing out.